We should see a live thing. Yes, a live thing has appeared in the corner of the screen. Hopefully, people will start seeing this for real. We are joined with an absolutely superstar panel here. We have my good friend Georgi, we have Jonathan Pierce, and we have Greg Terry. We may have a few bods who drop in off and on through this. I also realize that everyone has got some form of alcoholic beverage except myself, so I'll probably
no.
Greg is an alcoholic.
Mr. Fink, I do not.
Hang on a second.
These
fake alcoholic beverage.
I have Fresca, which is a grapefruit sparkling tonic water.
There we go.
Well, I have a beer from the Downton Brewery that has given me so much head that I don't know what to say because there's too many jokes in that.
I say, JP, that's quite a head that you've got there. Yeah, very frothy. Right, this is our anniversary episode of that. It's 4 years. It's actually a very somber and horrific anniversary. 4 years. Now we're entering the 5th year of Russia's full-scale assault on Ukraine. It's my view, at least, that this will carry on until Russia exhausts itself and potentially some kind of black swan event happens there. But we'll get into those details as we go on. There is so much to cover, but we're going to, I think, focus on things such as how Ukraine has withstood this onslaught, despite many Western predictions that Kyiv would fall within 3 weeks, how long Russia will keep going, and I think it's worth also covering, Anna had a great idea on her channel to ask guests this week about how their understanding of Ukraine has changed, how their understanding of their own countries and their sort of fallibility and weakness of democracy has changed. I think that's certainly a number of topics we can look at, how this has reshaped our understanding of Ukraine and the West. And for some people, it's reshaped their understanding of Russia. For others, like myself, who are always Russophobic cynics, it has just confirmed our very worst fears. Gentlemen, for those who may not know who you are, it's very unlikely, but could you introduce yourselves? Let's start with Georgi, top right, going from top.
Everyone's going, shall I speak first? Shall I speak first?
Yes. I should have just spoken like... first I want to say hello. My name is Georgi. I'm with the channel Ukraine Matters, and maybe you've seen me, maybe you don't. Watch my channel, subscribe. I don't know what else may I say. I already got a comment asking me whether or not Jonathan has used my name correctly, and it was absolutely not. But it was a good effort. So no, the pronunciation of my name still is a mystery. But please keep those comments coming about how you think my name is pronounced.
I might try 6 or 7 different variants through this broadcast. So, I mean, eventually I'll get it right.
Groggy. Yeah, no. I don't know.
Mr. Pierce, you are up on stage.
So I'm Jonathan M.S. Pierce. I once used to concern myself with questions about whether or not God exists and what morality is and what's out there in space-time. And now I concern myself with what's going on geopolitically. And I'm obsessed with the war in Ukraine for all the reasons I'm sure most people are, which is it seems very clear cut to me that it's a black and white war where we understand who the good guys are, the bad guys are. And it is a case of applied philosophy, really, where we look at the moral calculations and very clearly conclude, or at least I do, that Ukraine are the good guys and Russia suck. And I try and keep everyone abreast of what's going on in the war with a huge amount of daily videos on my channel, ATP Geopolitics. That's me, over and out.
And last but not least,
wonderful,
our dear friend, Mr. Greg Terry.
Thank you, Jonathan and Georgie. Appreciate all of you guys so much and all that you do. And I just want to give the biggest shout out to all the people. We're all 4 streaming live simultaneously, to all of you guys, whether you're in George's community or Jonathan Fink or Jonathan Pierce or my own, and then we all kind of mix together. We're all one big family. We would like just to say thank you. Thank you for standing for Ukraine. And what I appreciate is that we absolutely view things differently on many political things, maybe religious, sociological, psychological, it doesn't matter. What is important is the most important things we agree on. And that is, morality is right and what is actually right versus wrong. And in this situation, on the 4th year anniversary, and for me, I have struggled. I put out a tribute video this morning, just remembering Azovstal, and then I gave the daily update and was translating some Zelensky and Putin. I really even struggled to use the word anniversary for myself personally, because that has a positive connotation to it. Happy anniversary, or it's the 40th anniversary of our company. For me, this is a tragedy. And yes, it is the anniversary, but for me, this is day 1 of year 5 of a war that was scheduled to last 3 days. And now, on this day, we really have seen a lot change on this day, day 1 of year 5, whether it's what some things that Zelensky has said today that are very direct, whether it is things that Vladimir Putin said that were very direct, or even we're seeing these new UN votes where now the US is abstaining from things that they were voting yes on. And everything is shifting today. And then when you throw on top of that, 4 years ago, guys, we didn't have Donald Trump in office completely destabilizing the entire globe. Now we do. And that just adds layer upon layer. So for me, thank you to all the people of the world that stand together and come together. So that's my speech from the get-go.
Jonathan, can I just get started with a question? It's actually from Karen Spennock, who's a Canadian, saying, I'll be working at the time the live starts. I just want to point out that Congress could have picked any date for the State of the Union address, January, February, even March. So tonight, Donald Trump is speaking to Congress, right, to the nation. Why is he chosen today, the 24th of February?
I'm sorry, guys. Like, I know that's like Trump is a very important topic and he needs to, but can we like focus more on Ukraine than on Trump? I'm not saying anything, but like, just like, can we stop? Like
yeah, I get that.
Like, I get that. I get like every time I see a stream about Ukraine, the first thing I see people crying about Trump. US is not an ally of Ukraine. So stop crying about Trump.
I think that's what Greg has pointed out today.
Yeah,
actually.
that's the change, Georgie. It's shifted.
European leaders have come out very clearly today to go to Kyiv and to say all the right things rhetorically in support of Ukraine. Like, there is a European unity. Then you've got the $90 billion euros, sorry, that has now been released. You've got the 20th sanctions package.
Has that been released? Because I know Orban was trying to block it.
They've got around it today.
It was a block, but it was like a block, like just in name only, because to be honest, there was no reason for him to block because Hungary is not participating in this program. So
yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, they've been excluded from participation. So, but that's great. They don't get to hold it up, and Druzhba's been blown up. So that's a double sort of slap in the face for the Hungarian toad.
Big time.
Yeah, that's catching fire. I think it's a good point not to talk about Trump, but I did want to ask about that UN vote, because that does seem to be I would argue with Georgi that the mask has slipped, right?
United Nations.
They've always been, for the last year, the US has not been an ally of Ukraine, and the media and others and analysts have been deluding themselves in this constant cat and mouse game of will they, won't they? Whereas for Georgie and I, there we go. I get it right there. Georgie and I, it's been absolutely still not right. Yeah. It's been obvious that they weren't from day one on Ukraine's side, and the rest is just a puppet show. Yeah, let's move back to Ukraine, because the other question, of course, and we had this conversation, I think
the best way to start about talking about Ukraine is about celebrating, because like as Greg stated, that anniversary is a very, very sad word, but I also think that there's also some good connotations here that must be celebrated, which is that Russia got their asses handed to them in a large sense. By this point, Putin has no military victory in Ukraine. That is literally every single analyst that I'm speaking to, no one is considering that anymore. Like, it doesn't matter if it's some kind of a nonsense article discussing that Russia is still the world's #2 best military, whatever else. Everyone understood one thing and one thing only: Russia cannot win in Ukraine. And this has not been given to Ukraine. This is not some just handout or something. This has been hard won by the Ukrainian people, and in large sense, the ally of Ukraine that actually have been supported. So while I do appreciate all of the sadness and all of the thoughts and prayers and so on, I like thinking about thoughts and prayers when we finally win over Russia, and then we can commemorate all of the sacrifices that were in the way. And in the meantime, I am as the optimistic, let's kick the Russians' ass guy here. So I'm going to say that great job, Ukraine. Let's keep it up and keep supporting Ukraine from your side.
Let me say something in that regard, Georgie. On that, I'll agree with you. Okay. And that is a reason to celebrate. But the only indicators I watch, I don't watch any map lines per se, because the gray zone is expanded so far, or this analyst says this or this analyst says this. What I'm looking for is to hear the statements of Zelensky, hear the statements of Putin. And today, Putin's statements, I translated them. They were perfectly translated. You could sense the change, the shift in him, the panic, the fear, the worry, because he recognizes I'm now into a 5-year war. He called Ukraine today an enemy. He began to discuss the nuclear response because we've been hearing the articles about it. I understand. So I hear it in him. And then his back pocket is, I now have to persuade my people. I have to digital Iron Curtain it down. I have to mobilize. I have to do things to keep the image of how strong we are as the second army in the world. So for me, I do take a positive out of that, because I would say he was panicked today, but it was obvious if you understand Russian and you can get the nuances of the actual terminology and the words and even the order of the words, he was very, very upset today. So that's a good indicator for me as we go into year 5.
It's funny that you're listening to Putin and are able to make sentences out of it, because whenever I listen to Putin, I only hear a...
It's nonsense. There's a lot of nonsense in what he says there. But I think it's going to be forced, and this is a good one for Jonathan to respond to. I think he now recognizes, not just from that speech, but from the pressure they're putting Telegram under and other digital communications channels that are being throttled. I think he recognizes that he's going to have to make some tough decisions for the coming year. He's going to run out of soldiers for any new offensives, so he's going to have to do some form of scaled up mobilization, which he has avoided for 4 years. He's gone out of his way to avoid having to do this. So I think he recognizes there's tough choices around the corner. As you say, he's tightening repression, tightening the environment, ready for whatever choices he has to make. Jonathan.
I think that's exactly right. I think he is laying the groundwork for a mobilization should he need it. But if he does do a mass mobilization, it will be last throw the dice. I've been saying this quite a lot recently. I think essentially if he does that, it is all or nothing, because that comes with huge ramifications, both socially and economically, that will be self-destructive. And it will have to be a case of desperation to take the Donbass, for example. But then, of course, it takes time to mobilize that many people, and you've got to train them at least a little bit. You've got to give them equipment. And it's not just like, oh, let's mobilize 500,000 people, and then 3 weeks later, you've got 500,000 people. You've got mass migration. You've got chaos. You've got, but it gives him the option. I think closing down all of the platforms gives him exactly that option, so he can, if he so wants. But it's, for me, like, the question is, what is the best that Russia can realistically achieve, right? And then what is the best that Ukraine can realistically achieve, and what would it take to get both of those? And then we can kind of look at the probability of which way we think it's going to go. But I don't know whether that's an interesting kind of thought experiment to think about, what the most, like, realistically, if all things went as well as they possibly could for Russia, like, what could they actually achieve from where they are now?
Well, I'll hazard a guess here that actually it's moved beyond these achievements, because I don't think there is an end goal that would satisfy or preserve Putin's regime. I think his regime is now dependent on forever war. And actually, a sort of status in war is better than no war for him, a war where he's not necessarily taking big territory. He just needs an external enemy. He needs an excuse for repression. He needs an excuse to squeeze the economy further and further, because, of course, what I think he realizes, and what a lot of Western media doesn't seem to realize, is the moment he lets up the gas or is not engaged in some kind of full-scale warfare, he has built a kind of economic military Ponzi scheme. That thing is going to collapse like a house of cards the minute he tries to demilitarize his state. So I think he's on a one track here, and he's just trying to survive week in, week out, month in, month out. There is no plan to get out of this. And in fact, he's worked himself into a cul-de-sac. The question is, does he go, or does Russia collapse first? I think that's where we're going to be heading soon.
It's around to Georgie.
Oh shit! Well, I mean, who cares? Like, but I mean, I can quote the only one. Like, when I think like about evaluation of Putin, I like to look at people that understand Ukrainian strength and understand Ukrainian problems. So, for example, Budanov has been talking about Russians, and he has been saying that Russia is preparing for potential mobilization. They have the resource needed. So while there is a lot of speculation about that being that, oh my God, there's going to be a big social issue for Putin, ooh, it's going to collapse Russia, I don't think so. I think it's a faulty logic. I think it's a faulty logic.
They're on a track of addiction to warfare. I don't think mobilization is going to force any kind of big social rupture at all. They've got that pretty sewn up. It's more the economic shock, which they cannot let up on warfare. That's the problem, I think, the structural changes made to the system.
Yeah. The biggest weakness for Russia, like I always talk about this pressure cooker analogy, where you got two pressure cookers and which one's lid's going to blow first because the pressure builds too much. And for Ukraine, I think it's the energy sector which underwrites industry, commerce, just life in general. So the energy sector and boots on the ground, those are the pressures for them. And for Russia, it's the economy, and actually boots on the ground as well. And the economy is, I think, the best bet for hoping for the most success for Ukraine. So I think, like all other successes for Ukraine on the battlefield and here and there, I think are somewhat contingent upon the economy being in all sorts of trouble. And then that you get social malaise, social cohesion issues, people getting annoyed. We're not maybe talking about the destruction of society and it falling apart completely, but I think mobilization then compounds that, and economically it's just self-destructive.
Georgie stated that one of the good things is we're now hearing from Budanov more because of his change in position to the president's office, and I completely concur with that. In fact, I translated him yesterday, I think, or the day before, and I received a lot of comments where viewers and people around the world that support Ukraine were saying, thank you for translating Budanov, because now I'm getting to hear a different angle, a different viewpoint, a different voice. And I like how he's viewing it. Like yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, he's just walking away from a press lady, a member of the press, and she's asking some questions. He just turned around and told her point blank, he goes, listen, this is where we're at. Okay. Nobody's talking about elections. The Russians won't talk about elections. It's not happening, okay? Secondly, we're in a war. And the Russians, when they come to Geneva, they don't really talk about nothing. We haven't heard really anything from them positively. So here's where we're at right now. Two options, not three, not four. We either come to a justified peace or we have war. That's it, end of story. And it's just direct, and Ukraine has needed that from that position to tag along with what Zelensky is doing on the international level. Now the analytical level coming from somebody like Budanov, and not a Syrskyi, not a Zaluzhny. That's a good game changer for Ukraine going into year 5.
Yeah, I think if we to round up the Budanov discussion, it's great that people are still hearing. I will just only advise that he's still ex spy chief, so he's playing his mind games with you when he's talking about things. So you need to filter out.
But finally Georgie, finally somebody is playing the mind games, and that's good because exactly we needed that pushback against that Kremlin machine, and Budanov is doing a good job at it.
I think it's really important. Oh, sorry, Georgie, you can say.
Yeah, I'll just finish the thought.
So
with Budanov, the main thing is in the interview that he did beforehand, he outlined in general why Ukraine is struggling, and specifically with all of the pressure on Ukraine, he was asked question why Ukraine is not perceived as being strong and so on. And he says that in generally, there are about 5 areas in which country is evaluated, how country can be strong. And he says in almost all of these 5 areas, Ukraine is not perceived strong or perceived winning Russia. It was the cultural, economic, political, military, and religious. So those are 5 areas that he outlined in which basically Ukraine and Russia are competing right now, fighting essentially. And for a lot of the people in the world, it is still the Russia that is the number 1 in this competition. And he says that on all of these 5, Ukraine must compete if at some point we are to find some kind of a victory condition, to make a victory condition for Ukraine. So I think that he understands that very much, and that's why we see some of the refinement in these different aspects of strategy, that it's not only about military victory, maybe it's an economic victory, maybe it's so on, and it's also about sending the message, because it's about the perspective a lot, specifically when we're talking to support to Ukraine. Hey, Philip.
I was just going to add, just to go back to what we were saying, and I don't want to bring in Trump because I might get, my wrist slapped by Georgie. But I'm going to talk more generally about the US, which is, and it goes back to this idea that I think you're starting to see statements from Ukraine that are more candid about the US, and you're seeing people like Kaya Kallas, you're seeing Boris Pistorius come out today and say, essentially, the US hasn't helped. You're seeing people say that US is not the ally of Ukraine in very explicit terms, European leaders. And I think we're reaching this kind of critical mass moment where there's enough people in Europe and in Ukraine, and there's enough support from Europe for Ukraine that they are confident enough to say, we can take it from here, the US type thing. And I think Zelensky said today, it's up to us who we want to pick to be our European negotiating partner type thing. So they're thinking about getting Europe much more involved in negotiations, which is to move the US aside. So I think this could be a very, this 4th anniversary could indeed be an inflection point where the US starts taking the back seat.
And this is another interesting question I want to lob in here like a little grenade. I think it'd be good to get...
Hello, Philip.
Hi, Philip. He's on a train, folks, so there'll be a little bit of fun train noises, I think, in the background there. We'll get Philip to sort of join the discussion in a minute. But here's my little grenade thought I'm going to throw in here. There are a bunch of articles done around the anniversary, and actually a lot of the media coverage, even when it's sort of detailed, sympathetic or empathetic, is focusing on the tragedy, the exhaustion, the this, the that, and the other. There's another aspect which I think Georgie really kicked us off with here, and that is that entering the 5th year of war, Ukraine, in my view, is stronger, ironically, now than it was this time last year. Not on all fronts. Of course, it's suffered an absolute battering on the energy industry front, but in terms of military technology, in terms of scaling up drone, in terms of the innovation in the drone space and the sort of more systematic approach to that, as well as the distributed production through, scale up, startups, cottage industry, it seems to me that actually Ukraine is accelerating, getting stronger, and Russia is getting weaker. Now, that's not going to result in an instant victory or an instant collapse, but there seems to be a trend line. That seems to be a narrative that has to be got into the media because it's not cutting through. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are tuning out. It's one of the reasons why perhaps politicians are rhetorically supporting Ukraine, but not necessarily doing what they need to do to accelerate that. And they won't unless they feel that a victory is possible. They don't necessarily want to throw resources after something they don't feel is possible. And I think that, unfortunately, is the calculus of many politicians, has been since the start of full-scale war. But this is a narrative that we need to change. And it's not spurious. It's based, I think, on a reality. But I'd love to get your points of view.
Somebody. Let's get Philip in here while we got him, while he has connection.
Yeah, Philip, did you hear? Do you want to jump in?
Please introduce Philip, because some people were asking.
Phil, you're
also,
muted, by the way.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Jonathan, you might have to unmute.
I might have to unmute.
There you go.
There we go. Now you should be able to.
Now we can hear you. Yeah.
Oh.
You keep muting each other. You keep muting him.
Okay, great.
Right, you're back.
I'm on a train actually. I'm on a train headed east, so it's going to be dodgy. So I'll try to make it quick. I agree with you, Jonathan. We have a job countering Moscow's narratives. They seem to take the whole claw that Russia is an inevitability. It can't be stopped. This sort of thing. A lot of that is because many of the foreign bureaus have historically always been based in Moscow, so they take a very Russified vision of the region and the relationship between Ukraine and Russia. And somebody was asking for who I am and my bona fides. I'm a veteran broadcast journalist, used to work for CBS, CNN, ABC, Sky News in Britain. And I now live in Kyiv doing a weekly podcast called On the Edge.
It seems Philip is completely breaking up for us.
Phil, yeah, we can barely hear you, Phil.
And also it throttles the whole stream.
Gents,
we've lost you, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'm gonna
I think that's a goodbye.
Yes.
There we
so a bit of sorry, guys, because it combines all of the streams together, and then it tries to distribute. So if you have some buffering and so on, it's because the system tries to load in Phil, that is right now, and get data from his phone and stream it to you, and that's why it gets. So we will try to get Philip at some.
Well, just time. Remember, Phil, he's heading east, and that he accomplishes whatever he's setting out to accomplish out there. So,
absolutely,
yes, good thoughts.
I think broadly he sort of agreed with the sentiment that actually certain trends are strengthening. But yeah, I'd like to hear your views.
It's always for me about yes, the technology and the scale. So scaling up ballistic missiles. And cruise missiles and long-range drones and medium-range drones, the near-rear, what you're seeing with the FP2 drones and the Primari group and these other units that are taking daily, they're taking out really key places and equipment that are close to the front lines. And then, of course, your Baba Yagas and FPVs and bomber drones and all that kind of stuff. Like the massive scaling up of that with the help of allied nations, we should be seeing hopefully some cruise missiles coming from the UK, Breakstop from Czechia, the Narwhal cruise missiles, and even Romania have just made a new cruise missile that might end up in Ukraine, you can imagine. So I think once there's a scale of stuff that they can hit, and we saw the Iskander factory be hit the other day, that needs to be hit again and again and again. That for me is the military hope comes with, yes, the destruction of the economy, which is also compounded by this, but it's the strikes right from the front line to 1,600 kilometers away. It just needs to happen at scale, and I'm hopeful it will.
On that, I think one of the most positive things that Ukraine has accomplished over the last 6 months, as we now go into year 5, is their allowing the Russian people to feel it. And what I mean by that is, we can say, okay, we've struck this oil refinery in Timbuktu, and we look at it and we go, great, and we rejoice about it. We've struck this port, that is great. We hit this, we hit that. But when you start hearing that the city of Belgorod is out of power and people are starting to feel it, that is a good thing. We're hitting the power plants there in that Belgorod region north of Kharkiv. So these are good things. I would like to see Ukraine have the supply. They definitely have the ability, have the supply to make other cities start to feel that same
there's a little bit in Bryansk as well.
Effect. Bryansk, but Belgorod's been the biggest one. But even if wherever we can expand that pain to, makes it more real. And I'll be honest with you, it's encouraging because Ukraine definitely is on the technological swing up, and their production in their own land, inside, homegrown. These are all positive indicators right now that for me, and for me, one of the things that I like the most, more importantly than hitting, it's important, but when you begin to black out medium to large size cities, and that begins to be felt backwards, that's a really good sign.
Please hold that thought. I would like to address the technical issues, guys. On my stream, I know it's unwatchable. Like I am monitoring as well. I'm very, very sorry. StreamYard technical solution just fails us with this one. So don't feel obliged if you cannot watch it. It's fine. Like for people that try to watch it, my suggestion on YouTube is to try to move the slider back maybe like 5 minutes and then kind of rewatch it 5 minutes later with a 5-minute delay. That way you're going to get the smooth picture. Otherwise than that, sorry, the technical issues are just too much. So if you want to watch this stream, I'll recommend you seeing it in recording. It's going to be on my channel, and I'm pretty sure it's going to appear also on other people's channel.
That's weird because I'm
sorry for the technical issues.
I'm watching it on mine on this other monitor, and it's absolutely perfect. So
it's terrible for me.
There.
Yeah,
that's curious. We're joined by my dear friend, Mr. Yuri Rashkin from Minnesota, I think is correct.
Close. Wisconsin.
I got my
We're
confused.
totally different thing, but very close. Actually, the next state over is Minnesota, so you're close, Jonathan.
Could you introduce yourself to my sort of dear panel here, who may or may not be familiar with your work?
My name is Yuri Rashkin. I am originally from Mordor, and I've been in the United States for a long time, since I came as a child. And I am, among many other things, a YouTuber. And I mostly stream in Russian, which means that I get to talk to people in Ukraine and talk about what I love, which is American politics. Because I'm actually a local elected official here in Wisconsin, and politics is something that I enjoy. But now American politics is intertwined with world politics, of course, and Ukrainian politics. And so I became kind of in-demand explainer of what the frick is going on in Washington and beyond. And I appreciate the opportunity because Jonathan and I host a weekly podcast. I called it The Russian Threat. But we get together on Thursdays in what I call morning, which is 10 a.m. for me and 4 in the afternoon for Jonathan, UK time, most weeks. So Thursday. So that's what I got.
And Yuri also does a weekly show with Vitaly Portnikov, who is one of Ukraine's leading journalists. So, yes, you broadcast in Russian, but I think you have a pretty substantial Ukrainian Russian-speaking audience there, especially who, Vitaly Portnikov is held in pretty high esteem by most of the Ukrainians I've spoken to. Even if they don't necessarily agree with everything he says, they always find him exceedingly challenging. And so I think, you'll find that Yuri has an interesting perspective.
Yeah, Vitaly Portnikov, as well as Roman Cymbaluk, who is another very well-known Ukrainian journalist. And for them, I create kind of an opportunity to have a little bit of a bridge into the United States and to that audience. So I think it opens up new opportunities for everybody, but I'm certainly grateful to have such great co-hosts.
Fantastic. Well, we were just talking about the idea of Ukraine strengthening on this anniversary compared to last year, and Russia relatively weakening. And it is all relative, but this is not a narrative that comes through in the media.
Where sorry to interrupt, but just add a point to where we were at. Like we're talking about like long range missiles and drones and whatnot. One thing I do really think is a good sign is when a company, and you can talk about whether there are controversies with Firepoint, but Firepoint as a company being asked to do work outside of Ukraine and to scale up manufacturing outside of Ukraine as well as inside Ukraine is a really good sign. Like Ukraine are making apparently 400 odd mobility vehicles a month, or at least have the ability to. Maybe it's just the money that's missing. So there is production of a wide range of weaponry that is now going on that the Ukrainians have control over, and they are starting to scale things up. And I think that is a really significant bit of progress for Ukraine. So I just wanted to finish that idea.
For sure. I feel that that really is the only way that we're going to get through this is by supporting Ukraine, and Ukraine is getting stronger because, for one, Ukraine knows where it's getting aid, for how long. We know that 90 billion euros has been allocated, and we know the timeline on that. With Russia, we really have no idea. They could collapse tomorrow. They could collapse next week, next year, but they're unpredictable to themselves, to be honest. And I find that after 4 years, the first, in my opinion, with all the Jake Sullivan cursing aside, United States has done a tremendous amount of good during Biden administration. And so I look at it, today being anniversary, of course, of the big war starting, as just such a learning experience for the world about how United States operates and how we're capable of going in drastically different directions during our election periods, because we only have two choices, and that's what being polarized means. So I think that when we had one administration that was really for supporting Ukraine, but insufficiently, and then because they simply could not fathom that the cost that Putin is willing to bear would be so high that, because the goal was to raise the cost of this affair. Well, this has gotten very expensive for Russia, and it doesn't seem to care because, maybe money doesn't rule the world. Maybe there's other mental problems that people have that supersede that, like whatever Putin's got, the empire thing. So I think that now that we have a president in the United States who hangs Putin's portrait with him next on the entrance to his residence, I think the signal is very clear. And that means that on one hand, we are losing our alliances, we're losing our strength, we're losing our leadership. But on the other hand, it's important to admit that and to kind of own that, both for us and for others. We're kind of being forced into owning this when you look at what's happening with Iran, because we're like, could be doing a lot of things, but turns out we need, what do you call those? Allies, because we don't have them anymore. And that would really help with like Iran. And so that's not helping.
Yuri,
but,
Yuri,
has allies.
Yuri, there's an interesting comment from one of my viewers today that said, actually, I really like, as a European, they said, I really like the fact that the US didn't turn up today for the 4th anniversary in Kyiv, and that the US is doing X, Y, and Z, because actually it's forcing Europe to really stand up and start to be independent and work with a greater unity and a greater sense of purpose. So actually there is a silver lining to a cloud, that as the US steps back, Europe then goes, okay, we got this is ours, let's see how we can now again, if you've got Orban going and being replaced by Peter Magyar in Hungary, then you've got an even greater sense of unity in Europe, and you could generate a narrative that actually things could look
I would not bet on it, by the way.
But do you think there's going to be cheating involved?
Oh,
100%.
Hold on. I'm sorry, George, on this one, JP, I'm sorry, and Yuri and Mr. Fink, but I completely concur on this one with Georgie. If you think that this is a slam dunk in Hungary, you are.
Oh, I don't think it is at all.
No. I think we're going to see even more chaos as we head toward April for that. So, yeah.
Well,
for sure.
Georgia dream. You just have to follow the events in Georgia.
But the difference is Hungary are in the EU, and that
the question that I have is, okay, we gain clarity because we see the United States, Marco Rubio, helping Orban. This is our allies. So what you're gonna do then? If we're gonna, maybe, and actually, is Russia going? Is United States? Is the fear that United States is going to join Russia if there's such beautiful clarity that we're not really helping?
I think the stakes are going to be raised dramatically this year as Putin is running out of options. He is clearly going to have to ratchet up terror, which we already discussed, and repression in his regime as a preparation for potentially tough decisions. We don't know which decisions he'll make, but a more expansive mobilization is likely. But it could go a lot further than that. And I think you have to ask yourself the question: would he prefer a Hungarian dictatorship outside of the EU, which is right there in the heart of Europe, or would he prefer to lose that regime? Now, of course, I think he would push for his assets and vassals there to cause the maximum damage they can. He's not going to want to relinquish power over that, or control or influence over that. I think this could all ratchet up significantly, but there's so many different variables at play here. It also depends on whether he has an understanding of what resources are available to him or not. Is he being fed, reasonably accurate information in his internal system, or is he being fed lies and delusions from his military chiefs and his economic people? And, are they afraid to tell the Tsar the truth? We just don't know what information he's getting, and we don't know what decisions he will make or defer off the back of that information, false or not.
Well, one of the things we can rest assured in is, at the minimum of what we publicly know, Jonathan, and I know you speak Russian, is that he has been told, and Yuri, of course, absolute lies whenever he has sat at a table with, for example, Gerasimov, who will say, we 100% control Kupiansk, for example. And okay, that becomes the talking point, and he takes it, back to the Kremlin. So what we know publicly that he's been told has not even been true. So whatever he's being told in private, you can also assume is pretty inaccurate, or, telling him what he wants to hear. And that becomes problematic for Russia and beneficial for Ukraine.
I mean, the other tendency, which is an interesting one, is him turning on his own. I also have these regular conversations with Konstantin Samoilov, and he says there's a real ratcheting up of the targeting of the sort of billionaire class, the oligarch class, and the sequestration of their businesses. Obviously, a lot of the reasons are spurious, but it does seem that there is a tendency towards starting to eat the regime from the inside and target those who traditionally were, not, but they were untouchable en masse, at least as a class. I'm not going to say they're sort of independent and they had any political influence, or they're independent oligarchs. The Russian system doesn't work like that. You know, they're always renting their status and their wealth from the state, and it can be recalled at any point. I mean, that's the whole point of that. Not even feudal system, but something else entirely. But it just seems that there's an increasing scale of this requisitioning of resources from throughout the sort of vertical of power. And I guess if he's going to take difficult decisions, that's going to have to ratchet up significantly as well. Gorgi, do you think there's any? Do you think is this interesting?
Oh, sorry, no, my brain is it's like I'm just like in a parallel dimension. My brain is just rotting out. You know, it's like it's over 4 years of Ukrainian resistance, and I think this panel is like everything that is wrong with Western journalism, like literally everything. So I'm like just like we're talking about like what is happening in Russia. We're talking about what is happening in the United States, in Hungary, and so on. And we're treating Ukraine like it's some kind of a object of, like, you know, this influence from the outside, like it doesn't have a mind on its own. It's funny for me because like there's like so many. I just returned from Ukraine, and I saw so many new things that Ukraine is doing to win this war, to actually, you know, go against whatever is being thrown at her by Europe, by US, by Russia, by whoever. And we're here discussing literally everything else except for Ukraine. So,
yeah, but
I'm forgiving that just like I'm just rotting on the inside.
Yeah, but I think you'd be remiss not. I think you'd be remiss not to mention it at all, because without outside assistance, Ukraine would be financially destitute. They wouldn't be able to do these amazing things that they are doing, that you quite rightly point out. So it's not either or, but it's both and. Like I'd definitely say that.
I think my question is Ukraine defending itself, or Ukraine is defending us?
Yes.
Because the answer in my brain is pretty clear.
No, we all agree with that. Ukraine is the sword and shield of Europe. Europe, goodness knows what state Europe would be in if Ukraine had fallen, or if Ukraine wasn't prepared to fight.
I think that's the fundamental problem with the Ukrainian audiences, is that they kind of think that there's going to be somebody who is going to come and rescue them, and I keep telling them, no, it's you are the bulwark. You are the ones that are standing up against everyone. And it's really important that everything that I say, whatever I say about Trump, all of this is like we have this unhinged states of America, USA, you know, and but it's being held back, this madness, by Ukraine standing up to Russia. So all of this is being held up by Ukraine. So please, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I completely agree, Georgie, and I think maybe you're just misconceptualizing a little bit there, because nobody knows better than all of us that spent time in Ukraine that Ukraine is winning this war, that Zelensky is the leader of the free world. He is the one that makes the statements. That is absolutely fact, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that this nation that was supposed to be destroyed in 3 days, we're now into the 5th year, and they are demolishing parts and pieces of Russia. Those are facts. But to think that there is not a cooperation, billions of dollars have come through the hands of civilians of independent countries around the world to help Ukraine be who Ukraine is. And to just say it's Ukraine only is not fair to the Ukrainians either. So you have to look at it both sides. Governments have helped Ukraine massively. That's just a fact. But we all understand that at the epicenter of it all is President Vladimir Zelensky and the Ukrainian army. Everybody has failed Ukraine. The Budapest Memorandum is a failure. Every document, every negotiation, they stand and they lead and they fight. But just you can't just say, well, it's all Ukraine, because it's not all Ukraine. It's the pressure of the world pounding. Ukraine is defending Ukraine. Ukraine is kicking Russia's butt. It's easy. It's David versus Goliath. But in addition to that, to minimize what people have done, volunteers from foreign places that have went and given their lives and died, people that give up their habits to donate to Ukrainian causes, governments that have imploded because some have chosen to support Ukraine and some have not. I think when you have to put it all together. Of course, Ukraine is smashing Russia, but it's teamwork, man. Teamwork makes the dream work.
And this is where I would like to, because I think Yuri is absolutely right here. When I went to Ukraine and I talked, like specifically was interesting for me. I talk with regular guys at the front line in Kramatorsk, and I ask them, "Is like, I'm a YouTube or whatever. Let's talk about
You're admitting that now. You're admitting you were there.
Oh yeah. This is now public.
I didn't
information.
mention it
Yes,
because
it's public information that I just returned from the East. Yeah. So and the people, like the guy that I remember talking to, like a regular grunt, and he asked me a question that I think is very, very telling, which is, when is Ukraine going to be accepted in Europe? And I thought like it was a bizarre question for me. Because like how is this still not being perceived that Ukraine is Europe? And I think this is where Yuri's point is the most prevalent, that Ukrainians don't even fully grasp their current position that they're having inside of Europe. That right now Ukraine is not someone that is dependent on Europe, that we're doing some kind of handouts. European leaders right now, as you said, Jonathan, would be nowhere like if Ukraine would not stand up to Russia. Where would it be? What we would be doing?
This is the open question. How many of our population would run towards the action, would abandon their comfort and luxury lifestyles, or even non-luxury lifestyles? How many people would fundamentally change their lives in order to fight for essentially abstract values, identity, sense of freedom, agency, ability to express themselves, self-organize, solve problems? How many in Europe would actually stand up and do that? Would it be, and there would be individuals, of course, who do that, but would it be a threshold number? And let's face it, not everyone in Ukraine's done that. Not everyone in Ukraine ran towards the action, but a threshold number of people did, the same as a threshold number of people turned at Maidan to historically overturn a sort of Soviet kleptocrat from taking their country away from them. A threshold of people turned up, enough to turn the tide. I don't think we would reach a threshold in most of Europe. Now that's maybe to do a disservice to the Nordics, Baltics, etc., who I think are different there. But if we take broadly Central and Western Europe, my big fear is that we would not get a threshold of people willing to defend, whereas what we would get is something like a clamor for a kind of Danegeld, the sort of medieval or early medieval trend where these nasty, vicious Vikings are just, we don't understand their mentality and we cannot organize to oppose that extreme violence. Let's just pay them off. Let's just pay them off. I fear that is what a lot of countries would reach for. And indeed, maybe their centrist democratic governments would be overthrown in favor of Kremlin-aligned puppets who are prepared to pay the barbarian off.
You need liberal democracy with teeth. You need liberal democracy with teeth, and that's what I think.
Let me ask a question. I would be interested to hear all of you guys' opinions, and I'm sure everyone on the channels would also. Going forward into 2026, what would you consider? Because we all are fighting for victory. That's easy. What is victory? Going into year 5.
Yeah, that's what I was asking earlier. Like,
what is victory?
What is realistically?
I just like to hear
the most that Ukraine can achieve.
Yeah, well, my answer is always very simple. It's whatever Ukrainians decide, but I would like to see a Ukrainian state. For that's it, and the rest is up to Ukrainians.
Like whole territorial integrity.
No, like period. There's a state of Ukraine that exists. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, but there has to be peace, because if there's no peace, then what are we talking about? Because there has to be some kind of borders that are respected, and Ukrainians are the only ones who can determine what those borders can be with their armed forces, because Putin doesn't understand any other way. I guess that's my answer.
Yeah, and I agree. That's a decent sort of minimalist answer that allows as much as possible. It's like that, as long as the Ukrainians.
I'd like to see Putin watered. That would be nice too.
Georgie.
Oh, I'm not in a cock situation. It's 1991 borders and collapse of Russian Federation.
Okay.
Easy as that.
Really?
Okay.
No
Realistically, like real. Because let's be very clear what we're talking about. Are we talking about cope, some kind of a half situational, maybe that we can drag along, or are we talking about victory here? Because the question was about victory.
Yes,
right.
I think
Like,
if
and the
Ukraine
vision for victory
exists,
is clear.
if war ends and Ukraine exists, Ukraine won.
Yeah, and then the Russia comes back.
No, that's different. Then it's not peace.
No, but the question was about victory, right? We're talking about something victory.
Yeah, that,
For me, victory lasting.
I used that word on purpose, victory, because I see everybody's different points, the three that is answered, and Jonathan Fink is yet to answer. But I understand the perspectives of it all. But since it was my question, I'll kind of moderate it if it's okay. But it's
then I'll come in with my the casting vote
because you have to ensure that Russia can never do this ever again, not only to Ukraine, but to anybody else. And then I even take it a step further, because we got everything from 91 borders, reparations, Russia defeated, to if we can hold on as a state and have a peace that lasts for future, what's the guarantee it never comes back? It's why Zelensky's talking about 30-year security guarantees with U.S. congressional approval, not just some whisper in a back room between Rubio and Subiga. And we're talking about real standards. And then I even take it a step further. Ukraine joining the European Union, is that a part of the victory equation? So I just wanted to throw it out there for thought. So, and get your guys' opinions. Yes, sir, Mr. Fink.
I'll cast my vote here, and I think Georgi knows which way I'm going to vote on this one. Essentially, Russia does not understand, does not have a culture of law and legality. It does actually not have a culture of understanding borders. And anyone who's traveled around, especially around Karelia and places, that hit me incredibly hard. The idea that no one cared absolutely that this territory had only recently been absorbed by the Russian Empire, in the 1930s. When you go and look at the city of Vyborg, which fundamentally changed from being a vibrant, cutting-edge Scandinavian urban center to becoming little more than a rundown, degenerate village when Russian colonizers took it over. But they don't care. Theft is absolutely ingrained, and the only law is the power to take and hold territory, wealth, etc. There's no idea or concept deep in the culture of property, legality, or any of the stuff that's evolved in Europe over hundreds and hundreds of years of multiple revolutions. They didn't really go through the sort of feudal stage. They didn't go through the Enlightenment. They didn't go through the Renaissance. They didn't go through any of these major civilizational stages. So as long as Russia is an empire, it will always attack. And there will always be the impulse to expand and take and steal and ravage. And even if it has a proto-democracy or a pseudo-democracy, they will have people who understand that reverting to that behavior of stealing will give them either regime advantage or democratic advantage. So I'm with Georgi here. As long as Russia is an imperial entity, there will be no security. It will always be a threat. Ukraine will have to be an armed camp in the way that, say, Israel is armed to the teeth. And it'll have to stay that way forever as long as Russia exists as a unitary entity. So that's, I'm afraid, my answer.
My answer would be there's a difference between what do I think victory is, as in what would it look like, and I'd agree with Georgie that 1991 borders, everything back to normal, Russia crushed. What do I think's likely? Not that. Unfortunately, I just don't think that that's probably going to happen. And I think that if they are going to regain much of the territory, I think that will come diplomatically thereafter. Militarily, so it depends as well what you mean by victory in terms of a military victory or a kind of political military victory over a longer time period. In that case, I think there is a much likelier case that Ukraine can regain all of its territory and Russia just is kicked out of Dodge. But
I have actually another part of this answer, because I think for me the first part was my American side. But I think that really from Ukrainians' point of view, if I dare to be, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it really matters what kind of country Ukraine is. Because if Ukraine emerges from this as a deeply corrupt oligarchic country with, with some pro-Russian president that is leading the country, and that would not be victory.
I don't think that's likely.
Yeah.
I think Ukraine is in a really good position to be healthier than it was 10 years ago.
I'm doing the democratic thing. I'm starting a poll in my chat. What is victory? 91 borders and Russia castrated?
No.
That's my two choices. Russia,
I think Yuri understands very well that the situation and who is in power can change very, very quickly depending who is distributing the buckwheat. So it's always a big question with regards to the situation in Eastern Europe, and specifically when it comes to the peacetime. Right now, Ukraine is definitely on the drive, and I stated when this war started on who's gonna win and how Europe is gonna look was gonna be defined by how are we going to treat Ukraine, and we haven't treated Ukraine the best way, right? We haven't closed the sky. We haven't, we're still having this discussion whether Ukraine is part of Europe or it's not part of Europe, whether it should be part of NATO, which is fucking doing the whole point what NATO is supposed to do on itself. So it's like it's a whole of these discussions that are happening. But that is why I'm saying is for me as a person from the Baltics, right? When there's discussion we're going to have peace and Ukraine exists. Well, the Baltics technically existed, and it's but it was peace, but it wasn't really the peace that anyone would want, probably. And we
take
didn't
the
really
Baltics.
want that.
Take the Baltics, and I love your view on this. To say, is Ukraine accepted into Europe? You can ask that same question: is the Baltics yet accepted into Europe? In that, are there voices given equal weight with, say, German voices, which until very recently were appeasing Russia? And leading politicians, the Baltics would say this is a suicidal policy, and they would say this is what Russia is. You do not understand, and you're literally putting a noose around your own necks. This is the big question as to whether not just Ukraine, but others that tell Europeans uncomfortable truths are actually considered on a par with the large engines of European economy, Germany in particular. And we have to ask why Taurus still isn't provided. Is it because at its heart the German elite still hopes to have a rapprochement with Russia and start trading and buying its filthy gas again? I would say there's a real danger of a Ukrainian victory, which is only a half victory, and then people are falling over themselves to try to rehabilitate Russia. So this is not over by any means.
That would just be so freaking depressing. If we don't learn from this, we, the world, don't learn from this entire war for 4 years of Russia being a bag of dicks, if we don't learn from that, then there's no hope for humanity. Russia have exhibited every single freaking day that as a nation, as a government, they are morally bankrupt and should not be trusted in any interactions for the rest of my life. Right, sorry, Yuri, but it would depress the crap out of me.
Jonathan, I can just quickly ask, and then the point is going to answer itself. Is is there still Russian oligarch money in the Londongrad? Just asking, no reason.
Just asking.
Well, a lot of it actually was forced out, but that's Russian money. I mean, they didn't specifically tackle Chinese oligarch money, Middle Eastern oligarch money. So there's plenty of it sloshing around. And I think the scheme, I don't know if you saw this last week, an email was accidentally released by some absolute moron because he copied all the people or the entities into the two rather than the BCC. But a huge piece of the Russian machinery of holding companies to cleanse their oil was accidentally released last week. And what it shows to me is that we haven't even touched the sides on sanctions. We haven't really even fractionally got to grips with shutting down the laundering of Russian oil. And you have to ask at the end of the day whether that is through sheer incompetence and indifference of the West, or whether secretly they know about all this stuff and they're letting it slide because there's an economic gain in allowing Russia to continue with its filthy blood oil trade.
Money,
and unfortunately,
money
we don't have to wait to the end of the war. We are still, even now, not tackling, the money that is powering Russia's war machine. So goodness, when the war ends, it'll just be, 100 times worse.
Well, Jonathan, what I'm seeing about what the scandals and that they have and the consequences for sanctions, and are we really tapping into, accomplishing the goals right now with the Epstein case? You see that in Great Britain, people are getting arrested, and out by us, everything's fine. Everything's great. So what consequences, what sanctions, so, and what's interesting here is that what it sounds like the arrests were in Great Britain were highlighting what you and I talked about, which is there's crimes against children, but then there's really apparently far worse crimes against money. So if you're messing with other people's money, there will be consequences. So I think that when the Russians feel that their money is being messed with, they worry. And this is where we know about Prime Minister, Belgium, who was afraid to moving Russian money from Belgium because he was personally threatened. So it's just interesting to me how it's a different category when we go out to the sphere of money.
And what some of these people say in private apparently is even worse than some of the stuff they say in public. I was talking to someone who was actually in the room where Witkoff and this Belgian Prime Minister were there, and he reported back that their private comments were considerably worse even than the public statements that outrage us. So unfortunately, I think there's a widespread belief, and I'm going to throw this one out as well, because I think this is touched upon this, and it's incredibly important. There is a hubris and an arrogance and absolute ignorance, it seems, of how Russia works, despite the efforts of all our channels over 4 years. There is a fundamental belief amongst many who rule places like Whitehall and military procurement that, one, the drone war is not really applicable to us because that's not the kind of war we're going to fight. We're going to use our expensive air platforms and whatever. So it's like, it's all very nice, but these are things that are for Ukrainians, and that's great. It's a local problem. So there's that level of delusion. Then there's the sort of hubris there about this idea that Ukraine is defending Europe. I was speaking to a friend of mine, Cormac Smith, earlier. I haven't put that video out, but he says it on there. And he was told when he was working embedded within Ukrainian ministries by people in the Foreign Office that it really doesn't go down well when Ukrainians say they're defending Europe. Politicians and so on sort of take some offense at that. Maybe that's changed now, maybe it hasn't, but there's an extraordinary kind of arrogance to say, well, good little Ukrainians, excellent, they're defending their little patch, but none of this is really relevant to us. And unfortunately, I bump into diplomats all the time at sort of events I go to, and I have these conversations over and over again, which tells me that they really do not understand what's going on. They do not understand Russia. They believe that it's inevitable that the war will end in negotiation, whereas anyone who understands, Kremlin rules, Moscow rules, as described by Keir Giles, is that negotiations and diplomacy is another avenue of warfare, not the other way around. So unfortunately, I don't hold too much hope there.
How does Russia, like Georgie, for example, go to you? How do you think? I mean, what's the probability you think of Russia capitulating and losing, and like what's that look like? They're all different forms of losing, right? What's your most optimistic outlook for Ukraine and how it works?
Well, I think as like the main motto of my channel and everything, the main point that I'm always saying is we shouldn't really consider ourselves with like how enemy is gonna collapse, right? When they lose, they lose. That's just the inevitable effect of us winning. So what we need to focus is on us winning. Like, what do we need to do to on us winning? And if we're talking diplomacy, right, you said about what is realistic, what is unrealistic, and so on. And that is why I think Greg has been the great. He actually specifically stated about victory and how quickly we collapsed into this, some kind of a negotiated solution that should be potentially massaged into existence. And that's why, like, someone like Kaya Kallas really was clear on the discussions. She says that in negotiations, it's us that should be demanding concessions from Russia. We should be demanding the war criminals to be handed out. We should be demanding Russia to get out of Ukraine. We should be demanding things A, B, C, D, and so on. So my question is not what will happen realistically and when Russia will collapse and so on. My question is, what are we doing? How are we positioning ourselves for that victory? And that is the important part for me, like expecting some kind of a outcome from Russia. I mean, Putin is going to continue his war until finally he doesn't understand it, and he will try to maybe negotiate. But that is, are we going to accept it at that position and just let Russia continue on?
Let me put an American redneck spin on that for you, my Denmarkian brother. And agree with you here. If you're still fighting a war, you're fighting for victory. You're not fighting for some settled end. And that's where that negotiation process comes in. Because I promise you, and I know thousands of frontline soldiers, and I've spent 18 months there with those guys. They're fighting for victory. They're not thinking about, well, if we can get this place, then we're going to be able to better negotiate for that. And then if we can replace Rutte over there and then get into the EU by June 2027, and then, get Putin taken, they're not thinking about any of that. What they're thinking about is victory. And victory for them is 91 borders right now, 91 borders, just from what I've learned from all of my time in there. And until you get to the point where you're not fighting for victory, then you're fighting for something else. And that's not a war anymore. Now you've moved it to a negotiation game. You've moved it to a capitulation game. You've moved it to an economic game, a border game, a secure, a guarantee game. But if you're still fighting the war, you're fighting for unequivocal victory. That's just how I think they view it. And so I think that's what I'm trying to say. That doesn't mean that a year from now we're going to see something different. Yes, sir.
Thank you. That really helped me understand a little better my take, I guess, different take on this one, because I think if you look at it from the point of view of soldiers, my guess would be that their victory is Russian collapse. Because Russia has to stop fighting. If Russian war machine collapses, I would imagine to the soldiers that's victory.
Yes, I think it's true. I mean, I don't think, again, from my similar discussions, I haven't had nearly as many as Greg there, but I don't think anyone would seriously think that there is a plausible negotiation you can have with Moscow, because they will always lie, always dissemble, always cheat, always ask for more. And then whatever they agree to, they'll break it 5 minutes later if they have impunity to do it. I think everyone who's fought Russia directly understands this, and everyone who's lived under occupation understands that as well. So what Kaya Kallas says here is you have to dictate terms to a Russia that has been broken or finds itself incapable of putting men in the field. Then you say, this is what's going to happen. I don't think you enter into a negotiation. You lay out your terms and they can take it or leave it. But of course, we have to raise the cost. If they don't acquiesce to those terms, we have to define very clearly what we're going to do. And that includes, as Khodorkovsky's been saying for more than a decade, it involves cutting all economic ties. It involves cutting all diplomatic ties. It means not allowing Russian culture associated with the state, any institution associated with the state, to operate in the West or have any outreach to the West. You literally treat them as a zone of contagion until they dramatically change their behavior.
I'm out of turn here, so please excuse me, and I'll only go 20 seconds. But it was just yesterday or the day before President Zelensky referring to World War III. and Putin fighting World War III, and we start to hear more and more about that, and then we see the potential ramifications of Iran if that can spill over, but we won't talk about that. But regardless, for Ukraine, the epicenter of World War III right now, and if you compare that to World War II, when Germany was defeated, they didn't take their tanks and go home. They were completely neutered for the first decade. No army, no navy, no air force. All weapons destroyed or confiscated. Military industry completely dismantled for 10 years. General staff destroyed. There was no general staff, and all military research was banned for the first decade after their loss in World War II. So this is what we're talking about, to break that Russian war machine, because all they want to do is come back. They'll lie to you to your face, just like Dmitry Peskov and Sergei Lavrov did 4 days prior to the invasion on February the 20th, 2022, where they said point blank, we're not invading Ukraine. We have no desire for that. We're just holding military exercises. And we all know what happened 4 days later.
But it goes back to this idea that you've spoken about already, which is money talks, right? There are too many politicians that are just. Kaja Kallas has got it right, which is you got to force Putin to the negotiating table, right? Sorry, Yorgis, I don't mean to mention the T word again, but the problem with the T word administration is that they went to Putin and said, let's negotiate. And then Putin manipulates them, plays them along, and it just feeds into exactly what they wanted. Whereas Kaja Kallas's approach is exactly right, which is like, you guys suck. We're not going to talk to you unless you come to us because you are in such a bad state that you are forced to negotiate table. And then we're freaking talk. But the problem is that that's one end of the spectrum, Trump's the other end of the spectrum, and then everyone else is somewhere in between. And there needs to be a unified set of people helping Ukraine to force the best outcome for Ukraine. And that's just not the case.
Yeah. And you have to get somebody who can actually make the decision. In that vertical of power, it's only Vladimir Putin really who can make genuine concessions. Everybody else is a puppet. In the so-called negotiation round now, you have to see who they sent. Medinsky, they sent an absolute clown, an absolute buffoon and toxic oaf. That is a way of mocking. They're taking the mickey. It's a trolling. They're taking the piss. And that is their way of showing that this process is in no way serious. I agree with Gordy. I mean, all of that stuff about negotiations, it's just a complete kind of sideshow. So I'm going to turn things back onto Ukraine, but with a slightly US twist here. Ukraine is becoming the leader of military defense tech in Europe. Ukraine is developing an ecosystem of extraordinary solutions, which are being iterated on a weekly basis, so that, and I spoke to Artem Moroz earlier, that interview is going out tomorrow. He's the key person in Brave One. And there's a 3-month basic complete tech cycle, but actually on a 3-week iteration cycle, tech may not work across the front line if it's 3 weeks, 4 weeks old. So you've got this extraordinary kind of culture and ecosystem of innovation. Now, here's my question. Ukraine needs more money. It can scale up that production, but at the moment, it is looking for outside investment. Potentially, it's seeking US partners to try to scale up that tech. Is this quite dangerous? Because we've already established that US is, in many respects, an adversary. We've already established in this conversation that there is intelligence, information, and data that somehow lands up with the Russians through a leaky US administration. Is it really dangerous for Ukrainian tech companies to jump into bed with US miltech?
I think it's just important to understand that we see that this administration puts its hands into more and more different companies and projects, and we see that Eric Cartman, Trump is investing into a major low-cost drone company, I think in Israel, like $1.5 billion. So I think dealing with United States is just going to mean more and more dealing with Trump-related entities. And I think that's going to mean whatever that's going to mean.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting time at the moment where Ukraine has realized they've got some leverage, and the leverage is because they don't have the money, right? So they can't go to another nation and say, "We'll pay you this, and you can give us this," or that maybe, you know, some minerals they're being exploited by the minerals deal. Maybe there's a bit of leverage there, but now they've got expertise, experience, drone tech, the ability to train people. So when Poland say, look, we've got a bunch of MiG-29s, what can we have in return? Ukraine are in a position to say, hey, we can help you out with some drone tech. We can help you out with, you know, working this out. They've approached Japan saying, hey, we can teach you how to deal with an energy crisis. We can do this for you. We can do that for you. And I think Ukraine's starting to realize they do have at least a little bit of leverage, which is good to see.
I also want to mention that obviously drone tech is big, right? We all know about drone tech, and this is where I want all Europeans to actually tap yourself on the shoulder, because I usually shit on it. But on the European front, the biggest win, I think, in the last year was that there has been now massive co-collaboration and investment specifically in Ukrainian productions.
Yeah.
Ukrainian output per dollar or per euro, whatever, is just many, many times higher. And it is putting a lot of pressure on our European defense sector. I can tell you for sure, like after speaking all through and through with literally everyone in all companies, the fact that now they feel a bit of the heat under their feet, that suddenly they are not getting the contracts because Ukrainians are sort of proposing it 3, 4, 5 times cheaper, the solutions. They're starting getting really excited. And we're not talking just about the drone tech. Drone tech has been chosen by Ukraine very, very decisively, because when in 2000, I believe, there was a discussion within Ukraine where they thought about, like, how do we invest money more efficiently? And then they started looking for solutions, essentially, what is the highest kill ratio per dollar that we're having on different weapons? And they saw the output of drone tech, and that's why they started putting money in. But drone tech is not everything. And the fact of the matter is that right now, Europe is going to become a very big hub for a lot of military industrial output. Not only because we're investing in Ukraine and Ukraine is producing stuff, but because of the additional competitive pressure going onto the European companies to actually start producing cheaper and better. Biggest example, Helsing. Helsing has been like a unicorn in drone production in Europe. Yet we almost didn't see any of their drones being used on the front line. Why? Because they are PowerPoint salesmen. They are getting the government contracts to then separate, make something that sort of flies, and that's like our product, and then spend majority of the money to make nice PDF files or images, and by lobbying companies that will go to the governments and get them even more government contracts. And that was the whole working model of them. Yet as soon as we now have Fedorov that came in as a minister of defense in Ukraine, instantly that contract got discontinued, and Helsing now is finding themselves in a bit of a hot water, asking like, what do you have been doing all this time? And this is the pressure, the competitive pressure on Europe to actually get better and cheaper for all of our oil security. And that is going to be a big, big W for Ukraine in short, medium term.
100%. Two things to that. One, that's why I mentioned Firepoint earlier. I use them as an example because actually they've been approached outside. So when you start getting Ukrainian companies getting traction outside Ukraine, that is a win for Ukraine. It's a serious win. And the other thing was the law change back, I don't know when it was, about a year ago, when Zelensky and Parliament changed the laws to say that you can export weapons that you've got extra capacity with, that you don't need to, you know, if it's not going to go to the front line, if you've got spare capacity, then you can export it, and then that's going to develop a demand which brings money back into the country, and then it's just I think a win for Ukraine, and paves the way for Ukraine being able to export their expertise and innovation.
Well, Artem Moroz pointed out to me that actually one of the challenges Ukraine's got is not the limited production line. Actually, they have far greater capacity to output weapons. The limitation is what Jonathan said earlier, is money. It's not resources, components even. They're swapping out a lot of Chinese components systematically for homegrown alternatives. The problem is actually getting enough money in to get their production lines at capacity, despite the the strikes on energy. It's not even the shortage of energy that's limiting that. It's simply the money to get production lines at full capacity. So if they can increase, the output of domestic weapons by selling some abroad, then this, seems to be quite a good solution.
And that 90 billion euros, I mean, I don't know how quick. It's not like in spring, like one day, Ursula von der Leyen's going to come to Kyiv with a suitcase full of 90 billion euros. But like, I assume that but I assume it's going to be, coming at different periods right throughout the next couple of years. But I wonder what the impact of that money is going to be on production lines and capacities. And
you've got to wonder, because they also have to pay frontline responders. They have to pay hospitals. They have to pay state employees. So I don't know how much of that's going to end up with the weapons, but
they've worked out the percentage. Actually, I think if I remember correctly, I think 30% is going to go on government, and then the rest on militaries. But I'd have to look at it. But they haven't worked it out.
Well, I would just like to say, as the homegrown, I know Yuri is here in the United States, and Dobro Bojelovit. But I, as a homegrown redneckian here from the U.S., I listen to you guys there in the UK and Europe, and I'm just sorry that the United States is not a trustworthy partner anymore. And as an American who loves my country, I love my country, I love our military, I love the great things that our country has done in the past for the world, and it's disappointing. It's disappointing. I can remember so many times being with soldiers early in the war, first 12 to 18 months, let's put it in that window. Greg, thank you so much for everything you guys are doing, U.S. is doing, and now we hate to say it, but we just don't trust the U.S. anymore. And you're an unreliable partner, not the Americans, not people that are helping. That is a differentiation. Make sure we understand that. So, it troubles my heart to know that you're in a dire situation where victory could be so much easier if we would just not that it's easy, but so much easier if we would get on board and realize. And, I think it was even Ben Hodges over the last day or so has said, it's very disappointing that there has not been a plan for victory over Russia at all. We have zero plan, and it's disappointing. So for that, we all do the best we can, but just so bothered.
Greg, we'll adopt you. If you ask nicely enough, we'll adopt you.
Thank you, JP.
And you share the name with our favorite.
Don't come to Denmark. We have a so-so attitude to immigrants. So
let me tell you something. Let me tell you something.
Don't come on a boat.
Right now, I promise you, Georgie, if I come to Denmark, you will be picking me up at the airport, because right now, I don't think the American passport's very much liked in Denmark or Greenland right now. So I will definitely.
Yeah.
No,
I'm sorry to vouch for you.
We'll know our American friends. It's fine.
Yes.
But to pick up on that point, I don't think in terms of actually defining an outcome, defining victory, I don't think Europe has been any better. We are perhaps in Britain not quite as coerced by the nuclear blackmail. We are not quite as taken in by Putin's kind of rhetorical tricks, because we carried on providing Storm Shadow, and we didn't really care when the Black Sea Fleet headquarters was beautifully blown to smithereens by one of our lovely, gorgeous missiles. But we have not defined a plan. We have not defined what victory is. We have not tooled up and supplied Ukraine or tooled ourselves up in order to achieve that victory. So I think we're all in the same boat here. And again,
is that a problem of leadership? Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, it is. It's vision and leadership.
A lot of people on my thread asking, who is the leader in Europe? as in, really, who is the lead? Because at the moment, sorry to say, but the team, but who is leading the Allied response? And the problem is, you've got all these different entities. You've got the EU, you've got countries, you've got the US, and
we're never going to have a unified voice. And we've got great rhetoric from Macron. We've got very difficult to get a vision. But if you ask any of them, despite the great rhetoric on supporting Ukraine, not a single one of them will be either willing to or prepared to or could articulate a vision of how Russia should be beaten or what Russia should emerge afterwards, and whether we are going to actually try to actively play a role in shaping that. None of them want to think about that, because it is the hard problem, it's the difficult problem, and they hide behind various excuses that, well, that's not, for us to consider, that's for the Russian people. Well, I'm sorry, the Russian people do not have a history of democracy. They do not have a strong and cohesive opposition. So we're just going to end up with a problem if we don't take a more active approach. But unfortunately, again, talking to diplomats and those behind the scenes, I can tell you that this is an allergic question. They do not want to open that Pandora's box of what Russia should be like, and whether we should play an active role in actually.
And if I can chime in here, because it feels like I'm starting to think about this conversation, this question, and I wonder, how helpful is it? How helpful for us to think about where we need to end up when we see that Russia is not stopping, and maybe rather than focus kind of on all the different, my brain gets overwhelmed, and I go, maybe I should just think about what's the right thing to do, help Ukraine. And that, I think that there's a certain kind of a feature there
but the inability to actually strategically think through how a Russian defeat will be achieved, the inability to open that Pandora's box.
We just don't know.
We don't know, but the paranoia, the absolute inability to think about those scenarios means we will never think about how that victory can be achieved. In fact, we will hold back. I think there's been an active holding back on delivering what we should deliver to Ukraine, because our leaders are allergic to the very idea of Russia.
It's all too vague. Whatever it takes, we'll be here till the end, or whatever. It's like
a horrible phrase. Okay. And Starmer repeated that today, and several others repeated that today on the anniversary, as long as it takes. That phrase is an obscenity already. It's an abnegation of leadership. It's horrific, but it also
that only happened. But there's a reason that happens. Yeah, but it happens because there is no leader. So unless someone stands up and says, right, I am going to be the leader, and you are all going to coalesce around me, and we are going to help Ukraine. We're speaking to Ukraine. What does it take for them to win? Right, we have a clear vision that is jointly generated with Ukraine. Then it's top down. Then we know what to give them. But unless you have that, you end up having countries just giving them dribs and drabs and this and that. Oh, let's give you 100 mobility vehicles. Yeah, we don't need that. We can make them ourselves. This is what we need to win. Give us this 100%. So the vision needs to come from a joint effort that just isn't happening because there's a fractured alliance, because that's the nature of individual countries.
Well, I would just say before Georgie goes off,
don't want
I would just say this before
they're pulling their punches. That it's worse.
Your enemy can't be your friend, number one. And number two, I really like what you said, Yuri. I actually agree with you on this. To try to define what that ultimate victory is, and call it for what it is difficult. So instead of doing that, the best thing we can do is help the nation of Ukraine achieve victory, and that is on any way possible, whether it's militarily, economically, socially, every way possible. And then, JP, you're going, okay, we need that leader to stand up. The leader has stood up. His name is President Volodymyr Zelensky. Yeah. And he's trying to lead. And these coward leaders, and even some of them in the UK, you called out Starmer, I'll call out Starmer. You keep saying the same crap over and over, which is, we're with you until Jesus comes. Well, good luck, buddy, because Johnny Pierce doesn't think Jesus is ever coming. So let me just tell you, you've got to be pinpointed, aggressive, and
But you've got to understand why people are saying that. They're saying that because there is a
because they have no. It's what Ben Hodges said. They have no plan.
I'm saying the same thing.
I know you are.
No vision because there is no unified kind of sense of alliance.
Agreed.
I mean, you've got coalition of willing, you've got the EU.
Okay, then I'm going to say
all these disparate sort of groups.
I've been holding this back, and I'm going to say it one time because I know Georgie don't want to talk about it, but Trump has destroyed any possibility of unity that can come between what used to be friends and allies that could bind together and help Ukraine in an overwhelming way to defeat Russia. That's just a fact. You can call it for what it's a fact.
I'll throw in another thing that really freaking needs to happen is we need to go to war on disinformation and cyber warfare. Like, we need to go on the offensive. I've been saying this for a long time, but we need to be attacking Russia. And I'm sure we are, and we're not talking about it, but it needs to be far more concerned. But disinformation, we need to be shutting down Russian disinformation because it is affecting our democratic discourse and our democratic mechanisms. Like, our democracy is being attacked as we speak. Each of the countries that we're in by Russia.
Johnny, you'll love this. I visited the
wait. Are you saying that the European plan of fighting disinformation at the center that they created that said that the best way to fight disinformation is to inform society that you're being misinformed? Are you saying it's not working?
It might be a little bit weak.
What? By the way, they're getting millions on that. Just saying is like you can Google EU action on fighting disinformation. You're going to find out a lot of very new stuff and so on.
And let's be careful because our dear friend Pecker now works for EU versus Disinfo. So
who?
Pekka Kaliniemi,
Vatnik.
Oh, Pekka. Okay, nice.
Pekka's gone over to the.
No more.
I'm sure their output will significantly improve. But Johnny, you'll love this. I saw the headquarters of the cultural battalion of the armed forces of Ukraine. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. You've got a room of philosophers over here, trying to pick apart Russian narratives. You've got a room of musicians trying to create this resilient culture. You've got artists. There was even, Guri will love this, there was an entire room of artists from the Baltic called the Forest Brotherhood, creating satirical paintings to oppose Russian propaganda. You had a room of philosophers. You had a room. I mean, it was beautiful. Artists.
It's going to abstract war. This is abstract war.
All right.
But this is, it's actually powerful when it comes down to it.
But then I'll throw two victories for Jonathan and for Jonathan, because I think victory for Jonathan and Jonathan is delivered by emptying out Russia's pockets. Because if Russia has no pockets, then for Jonathan Fink, I think that's the direction. Where are we headed? We're headed to empty out Russia's pockets. And for Jonathan Pierce, I think when we empty out Russian pockets, there will be no more Russian propaganda because it costs money.
It costs money, exactly.
And
when was the last time where they weren't pumping out propaganda at this kind of scale or attacking everybody?
When the Soviet Union fell apart, they had no money.
1992, there was no money. There was no money whatsoever.
Time.
That we have to kind of somehow engineer it to return to that point.
I can just say that, by the way, an interesting thought. Like, if there is no Russia, there's no Russian propaganda. Just saying.
Yeah.
We finally arrived at consensus.
This is. I mean, that has, for Russia not to come back and take a second bite of the apple, it has to have no money, and that if it has no money, it will disintegrate. And it will. How likely that is to happen, I don't know, but it's good to see the National Wealth Fund being eaten up on a monthly basis. So that's at least something.
It's a bit more complex than that. Like I looked into the economics. Like it's terrible, but they're doing their stuff right there right now. They have been aggressively cutting a lot of the programs for their economy. So
their expenditures.
They're cutting their spendings, because I was very, very much surprised.
But Russian culture. Oh no!
I mean, that's one of the 5 aspects that Budanov said, and so on. And I agree, Jonathan, that it's very important. A lot of these things that are being said about the culture and so on. It's one of the aspects that we need to fight on. But like for me, the question is like, well, how many of these aspects are, for example, on TikTok, right? It's one of those metrics that I think, because what I always try to remind to everyone, that we, the supporters of Ukraine, are super niche. Like we are barely existent. If you look at the social media footprint, like the people that are covering the geopolitical situation in general is pretty low. And when you filter out like everyone that is covering US internal politics and trying to focus on quote unquote world geopolitics, then you suddenly find out that this is just a small footprint with barely any exposure. So when we're saying that there is like a culture and we're trying to promote that there is like a Russia, it is still a very much an internal club. But I always say to not lose your faith about it, because few people make change and continue supporting Ukraine, and that's what matters.
And yeah, and just doing the work I've done over the last 4 years, and actually I report on freaking anything that takes my interest, which is anything around the world. And actually people are, I get American viewers that are like, oh my goodness, I'm not hearing this anywhere else. This is really good to hear about, this aspect, and then trying to draw it all together and how it all connects. I find that really important. It's all about the joining the dots, and how actually it is really important to understand how China operates, to understand how Russia is operating, to understanding the war in Ukraine. And I'm just one person, but I think, hopefully we are all involved in trying to make the information spaces full of more meaningful matter and help Ukraine. Well, at least that's my intention.
Amen.
Hear, hear.
Yeah. So, Yorgis or Georgis.
Yorgis.
I mean, it's right there. You can just read it.
Georgi. Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
Yorgis.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That's basically what I said. So what other little nuggets do you have from your recent trip to Ukraine that you can share?
I mean, it's actually wonderful, right? Everyone was looking into how they can survive the energy, how resilient are Ukrainian people, and they're pretty resilient. Like that was the main thing that I really wanted to gauge, right? Because we're here discussing how this war should end and how much we need to support, and I'm being a bit provocative, and it's all good and fine. This is all good fun. But for me, the important part was to gauge whether Ukrainians are continuing and ready to continue fighting, because that is the most important. For us in Europe, we a little bit are selfish, because we are having this nice and cozy life that we used to, because Ukrainians are fighting, because Ukrainians are dying. So for us, it is sort of a beneficial for Ukraine to continue fighting, hopefully winning. And that's why, for me, understanding whether Ukrainians are still ready and willing to go was crucial, and they are. Despite all of the cold, despite all of the everything, it's super annoying. Like when you wake up in your apartment and you don't have any electricity, like just the annoyance level is hard to describe. Not that it's demotivating, not that it's so on, but just the fact that like you're waking up, you need to go to work, you forgot to charge your phone or something in the evening, and then suddenly you need to go somewhere, you don't have everything, and you still need to function like a normal being, despite the fact that there's been air raid alarm and so on. Like the missile strikes that we're looking at Ukraine and thinking that it's horrible for Ukrainians, it's more of a like, man, again, could you do it maybe the other night? I really needed to wake up for the morning, because you still need to function.
I know you're answering Jonathan's question here, but I just want to throw in, Georgie is telling you the absolute 100% truth right now. So listen, he just got back. He's spot on. And the only thing that gets frustrating, Georgie, is when you're on the 11th floor and you go out and go, daggone it, I gotta walk the steps, not the lift. Don't get in the lift.
The elevator is the worst, like, because in Ukraine there's a lot of high-rise buildings, and it is like the nightmare. Like if you need to get up, and there's like the time, some people specifically run away from work earlier to get specifically the time when there is still electricity, so they can get back up to the apartment while the elevators are still running.
Yes.
It is.
You don't
is
be
like
in
this.
when the power cuts off either.
No, you do not.
That's not great.
Sort of. And finally, just to finish off, like the best part, as I was moving eastwards, like towards the front lines and so on, the most obvious and clear feeling that I got and takeaway from my whole trip, and I'm going to finish with this, is that as soon as you get into that eastern part, you start seeing the sense of direction, purpose, dedication. There is no more discussion whether we need to do this, whether we need to do that. All of the conversations about what should be, who is talking to someone, is sort of like a background somewhere where it doesn't really matter. What matters is how are we fighting the Russians, both in civilians and also the military. When people get together, they don't discuss what Trump said, what's and so on. This is a privilege of us here, far away from that side, talking about it.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah. So they're fully dedicated to victory, and they're discussing every time how to win and what we need to do better to win harder.
Yeah.
The challenge, interesting challenge for Americans is that like we have to deal with everything that is happening here now, and we have to keep an eye out on what's going on outside and foreign policy, where we have less control than ever because president can do almost whatever he wants, and Marco Rubio insists on that. But just being on the inside and dealing with it as, you know, I keep thinking that during World War II, people in concentration camps were hoping for Americans. But now we're it. This is like there's nobody else is coming. There's no Martians even that we can anticipate that are going to rescue us. So we have to take care.
Now, well, be careful because they're releasing that the Martians are real. So
Well, Obama has already, I thought, released all the information, and Trump wasn't happy about that. So
I'm just messing with you.
I know.
But Yuri,
if we're counting on Martians, we're in pretty deep doo-doo.
So you're in Wisconsin?
Yes.
Okay. So
why such heavy sigh?
No.
Wisconsin.
Well, you're a cheesehead, but listen, you're Midwest. So over here in the East, there is zero. I can't say zero. Let me be as accurate as possible. In the United States, in media right now, which we all understand mainstream media is a failure, but there's very minimal talk about Ukraine right now. So we're so important what we do every day. And last week, guys, I was live last Wednesday, and then I had to leave. I was heading to a meeting where a group had asked me to speak about Ukraine and propaganda and explain to them what's going on. And I was in a room full of people, and some of them even asked me, is the war still going on? Okay, That's the reality for our European and Brit friends here inside the USA right now. And it's not all. And the Americans that are in the chats right now on any of the channels, you're not. But it's a significant issue right now in the United States.
I bring it up specifically to compare with what Georgia was experiencing with high-rise buildings, in a sense that when you have that kind of a level of concern, you stop paying attention to a lot of other things. You don't talk about what's happening in America. And in America, the harder the life gets, the less we pay attention to everything else as well. And that's really dangerous.
Very.
I mean, this is the trick of authoritarians all over, isn't it? Is to actually make sure that you're concentrating on where the next meal comes from. You're not thinking about bigger strategic issues. You're just
I made it to the elevator. Yes.
Yeah. You're just trying to concern yourself with your immediate circumstances. This is why I find Ukraine so incredibly fascinating, in that everybody has to think about their immediate survival and staying warm in these things. And yet you will also have strategic conversations. You'll also be looking above your own immediate concerns to think more strategically. And I think that's an extraordinary skill that we kind of have to relearn, because I think we've gotten out of the habit of being able to do those two things at once: concentrate on that immediate survival and think, look beyond the horizon, look to the future, look with some form of optimism and hope, and then plan for how you achieve that hope. This seems to me a uniquely Ukrainian concept, which at some point, I'm sure we had it in spades as well, but we have to relearn that.
And to Greg's point about people not paying attention in Wisconsin, I think on some level you're absolutely right. Yes, we have a lot of, I mean, Minnesota next door and ICE and what's happening over there, that's, very close to us and people care about that a lot. But I attended a concert that was put together by Milwaukee Ukrainians in Milwaukee a couple of nights ago to commemorate the 4th anniversary, and it was beautiful. And they had a really nice, actually, display of different Ukrainian women's clothes from different villages and regions. And I really loved it because it highlighted that Ukraine has its own culture and its own unique way. And I think that's where community really needs to just not step up, but again, take ownership, because everybody's going to talk about things that are important to them. If anything, I find it sad to see in the United States that when we do see somebody walking with a Ukrainian flag, it's rarely feels like Ukrainians. It feels like it's usually Americans who are taking on the plight because they see it's important. But people from Eastern Europe are not really big into, going out and standing and with protesting it. In America, it seems like it's a powerful form of self-expression. And for Russians, it's, I think I'm preaching to the choir here. I guess on that level, I was thrilled to see that video that there was in Madison. Today, I saw a video on Facebook that there was a small gathering period with Ukrainian flags by state capitol to commemorate 4th anniversary. So I think people are paying attention, but maybe that's the difference, is that I'm speaking about no Kings 2 and no Kings 1, those two huge protests where I saw a few Ukrainian flags carried by almost sometimes the same people that carry Palestinian flags. And that was just wild to me. But that's, so it's important to also raise awareness of that citizen participation among those that can in United States. But hey, everybody does it their own way. And if it's a concert in a church and that raises money, that's great too.
Agreed. And even Jonathan Pierce and Jonathan Fink would go to that concert in the church to raise funds for the Ukrainian armies. And who knows, Johnny Pierce may even sing a solo in the church choir. But Georgie, I
went to a lovely carol concert this Christmas in the Ukrainian cathedral. So,
there you go.
Not averse to the bells and smells. I like that stuff. But,
I will say this, and kind of tag off on Georgie here, and Yuri, and that is, Ukrainians are the most resolute and ingenious people I know, and I put those two words together on purpose. They're resolute in the war they're fighting, and they're ingenious in the fact that they will find a way to get the job done. That's Ukrainian core. But with that said, I just want, as we go into year 5 now, I just want to remind all the folks watching on all the different channels that they're still human beings and they live under air alarms. And yes, it becomes second nature, and you walk down the street and this cafe has power, that one doesn't, or you're on a 12-hour cycle and you live through it, but they're living through it. So just every day,
recently, Greg,
be thankful for what you have, and remember the Ukrainians that are fighting, and everyone's fighting in that sense.
I've heard a number of times recently people say, or Ukrainians saying, look, I'm fed up of hearing that we're resilient, because that just gives permission for everyone not to give a shit. Do you know what I mean? Oh, you're resilient, that's okay. You'll
it's like saying an artist is supposed to be starving.
Yeah.
I get that, but the reality, the truth is, they are resilient, and and I mean it from the character side. And that does, you know what the angle I'm coming from. I applaud them, and fight with them and stand with them and honor them, because it's just amazing.
Let's say hello to my dear friend Alex, who's joined us. I don't know how many of you know. Well, I know Georgie, and I think Jonathan. I think you know Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Well, Georgie and I have met in Lviv, and obviously I know Jonathan. But for the rest of you, pleasure to speak to you for the first time, I think, on the stream.
Alex
Hello.
is a well. I'll let you announce who you are, but he dabbles with drones. Dare I say it?
Yeah, I dabble with drones. I just like have stuff like that lying around my kitchen table as a normal person does. But no, my background is I have a bachelor's, master's, PhD from Imperial College. I taught the course and wrote the course and taught the course in composite materials at Imperial, and basically figured out a way to repurpose tech we developed for essentially aerospace and defense, and put it into drones. At least that was the idea.
Yeah,
absolutely for Ukraine. That was the idea. So never. Well, I guess a satellite is a drone. I guess the launch vehicle for a satellite is a drone. So normally really fucking big stuff, not tiny little things like that.
And you've dropped the first F-bomb of the whole live screen, so congratulations.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that we?
Yeah.
No, Georgie,
I will not be beaten.
No, Georgie had one earlier. He slipped it in really quickly.
All right. Okay. Well, Georgie said
oh God, we're going downhill now. I'm just.
I mean, that is kind of my thing. If you want to be civilized, I wouldn't be here. Like, I think Jonathan tried to do a NATO after dark. And I think that got very uncivilized very quickly. It's just like, you said NATO after dark. What were you expecting? So sure enough, I like had a half a bottle of wine before I turned up on that. So
I'm just pleased you're not here as a shark, because you have been known to turn up in a shark costume.
I have literally got out my shark outfit. So I'm wearing a Vyshyvanka linen, so very breathable. But no, shark outfit's not very breathable. The fan helps. Like a friend of mine, actually Iranian, she was at the rally, the Ukraine rally, and she's just like, "Why are you so wet?" It's like, I'm basically wearing a bin bag. What is?
Well, let's ask that. How was it? Because I wasn't able to get up to London today, but you've been at Trafalgar Square at the.
Indeed.
We're trying not to use the word anniversary because that seems inappropriate, but the sort of fourth milestone of the war. What was the sense there? The speeches, the atmosphere in Trafalgar Square.
I would say notably more professional this year. Crowd similar size. I thought it was
hundreds,
really
thousands. What kind of
definitely thousands. I think last Trafalgar Square, like if you fill that place out, it's like close to 10,000. It's not 10, but it's close. But yeah, the place was packed. I also thought it was interesting this year. A lot more foreign flags. So like. I happen to be a friend with someone who organises these women life freedom rallies in the UK. She's come to actually the first time she went to a Ukrainian event, she went with me because she thought Ukrainians might not understand that the Iranian people are different to the Iranian regime, so she didn't want to go alone. So it's gone from last year. She's like, I'm going to go if you're here. I wasn't supposed to be in London. I'm supposed to be in Kyiv today, but missed a connecting flight. But yeah, she was there anyway. But it's great that she's just like, I know Ukrainians now. She had a couple of Ukrainian friends. You might have seen photos of Ukrainians at Iranian rallies going, there's a really good one where there's a Ukrainian mother going, I want freedom for my kids and I want freedom for Iranian kids because I'm a mother and I want equal rights and equal opportunities for all people. So she was actually now a friend of my Iranian friend. So the fact that the Iranians feel confident enough to be like, if we turn up with a lion and sun flag, they will know we are against the regime which is sending drones to murder Ukrainians. Shitloads of Hong Kongers as well. Obviously, you have the Baltics and the Nordics there. Nothing that's standard. But yeah, it's the nationalities which maybe are a bit more unexpected. So I thought that was interesting. I thought it was great that Iranians were just like, okay, these people understand that we're trying to defeat fascism as well. It's just our enemy's internal, your enemy's external. And yeah, I thought that was actually a really nice thing to see. So interesting development, but yeah. But in terms of the professionalism, personally, I actually didn't particularly like it because in front of the stage, they had these like VIP seating area, so we couldn't get up in close. But in terms of who they had on the stage and the orchestration and how it was choreographed, very, very professional. I'm not sure whether that added or detracted to the feeling in the crowd. But at the same time, if you're the audience, I can't even remember how many ambassadors we had from all over the place, just coming up and going, hi, I'm the ambassador from my country to the UK. Proud of it because my country and the UK are on the same page. there was a little bit of a pissing match in terms of who's giving the most money relative to their country. It's actually the Belgian guy said he was like second or third last. Like, can we stop talking about how much we're each giving and just all agree that we all need to do more and just get on with it?
Appropriate coming for the Belgians who blocked the full handover of Russian assets. But,
that was interesting. I'm just like, bold. But even still, like it's it was it was a lovely experience. Obviously, everyone's on the same page. It's very, very friendly. I strongly recommend going out as an inflatable animal. Everyone is instantly more amenable to you. Another random thing is I had a NAFO flag on, and some random person on the street was like, "That's a really cool flag." And I should have asked him if he was NAFO. He's just walking past me. Obviously, there were loads of NAFO fellas there, and we were kind of together.
And of course, despite the suppression on X, which has significantly, fragmented the community, but earlier on, and I think we're probably winding up. Let's check with everyone, whether they feel we're sort of, heading towards the end, or whether
sounds
you're
good
going
to me. I have to make sure.
Definitely for me as well.
Yeah, I've got to make sure my boys aren't still playing on their bloody PlayStations.
I say I'm headed towards victory.
They're heading towards victory.
It's not the end. It's victory.
Before we do, I wanted to put this question to Alex that we asked earlier, because again, he's got a very specific drone perspective on this. I think we concluded earlier that coming into the 5th year of the war, Ukraine is in certain respects getting stronger and Russia is getting weaker. And this is a narrative which is singularly absent from parts of the mainstream media. But from your drone tech perspective, do you feel that Ukraine is in a stronger position now than it's been, let's say, last year or the year before, in terms of the evolving drone or miltech ecosystem?
I mean, well, you've interviewed me about this. Obviously, Ukraine always develops the innovation. As I mentioned before, there's the possible exception of fiber, where they had an advantage because of Chinese help. But when we last spoke, or I did an interview with you, one of the things I was really shouting for is like, we are drastically underutilizing our industrial base to support Ukrainian drone manufacturing. I actually did the operator Starsky thing, and in your interview, I think I gave the example of automated fiber placement, and then for him, I think it was resonant fusion or modern manufacturing technology. So it's like, this is how we make wind turbines in Europe. This is how we make airplanes in Europe. We have this equipment just lying around our national research centers, our universities, doing nothing. And that was like a year ago. And I thought it was really, and one of the things that we actually specifically talked about, I said, look, if you went to an automotive manufacturer, I think I gave the Germans as an example, and be like, look, you guys are having a really bad time. You're getting your asses kicked by China, but you have a lot of highly trained technicians, skilled workers, engineers, who are basically massively underutilized. For example, the BMW plant, BMW makes something called the i3 and the i8, used to, carbon fiber car. For an i3, so this is a family car, family runaround, the entire carbon fiber chassis weighs 70 kilograms. They can churn one of those out of a mold in less than 10 minutes. So an entire car body out of composite materials, which drones are made of, in less than 10 minutes. All of that technology is European. You've got Henkel in there, you've got Evonik in there, you've got BMW in there. They've developed this capability to churn out incredible quality, very cost effectively. Like a BMW i3 is like £30,000 for a battery car 10 years ago. That is astonishing. And just like, and they scrapped it. That line doesn't exist anymore. They still do composite parts, but all of that knowledge, all of those technicians who know how to work with composites, which is different to working with metal, still retained. Now, actually, it's Renault who apparently maybe was listening to our interview, because Renault converted some production capability to making drones for Ukraine. And one of the other things I said, one of the other things I was talking about, Jonathan, is just like, okay, labor law with unions is a bit tricky, but if you went to these guys like, look, you're not allowed to do more hours per week or whatever, how about we pay you overtime and you just use this stuff which costs millions or billions, which we're not using? And Renault have apparently gone, seems like a good idea. And they found that 90% of the people in that plant will volunteer to do overtime to make drones for Ukraine because they're proud of it. And I knew that would happen because I know the guy who basically makes the launch tubes for the what's our surface to air? What's our manpad called?
Martlet LMM.
It's the British one which has the tungsten things that come up. So he was giving Starstreet. That's the one.
Yeah.
So he was saying that he was giving a talk at an event I was giving a talk at, and he was saying that actually when the full-scale invasion broke out, like the motivation amongst his employees, apart from a few, he's just like, generally speaking, productivity went up because they're like, we're making weapons for Ukraine. And he's like, my employees are really proud of that. So the fact that Renault have jumped in here and gone, okay, we're repurposing automotive production capability. Like they make the i8. I have one. It's a really good car. Let's make drones. And it turns out, actually, if Ukraine gives them a design, tells them what they need, and then they just make it, that's effective. I mean, I think the number one thing is it has to be a Ukrainian developed design. We should not be designing stuff for Ukraine. They should be telling us what we need. And then we go, we have all of this spare industrial capacity doing sod all.
It's quite interesting to see how Germany is getting really on board with reindustrialized. They've had a stagnant economy for 5 years or whatever, and they are going to town on building military equipment at the moment. And there you've got Rheinmetall taking over VW, I think, facility. You've got all sorts going on. Britain's doing this to an extent. Canada's doing it to an extent. There is this like using Ukraine as an excuse. Maybe that's the wrong way of looking at it, but being opportunistic with regard to the war in Ukraine and stimulating the economy whilst helping Ukraine, I think is a really, really important thing for us to do. So it's a win-win.
It is absolutely a win-win. It's definitely not zero sum. Like, look at it from the perspective of a worker in a Renault factory making a drone. I could have been fired because, frankly, we're not doing well in the automotive sector. But instead of being fired, I have my job, I'm at the same factory, and I'm doing overtime, which means I'm getting paid more. So the workers are getting paid more. The area around the factory is doing well because people still live there, still get paid more, and Ukraine gets more drones. And if we ever actually need to fight ourselves, this is just everyone wins apart from Russia, which is kind of the objective.
I think Georgi mentioned this earlier as well. As long as you have that sort of communication to the front and you're listening to what Ukrainians actually need, and you've got almost a sort of real-time feed to say, okay, well, that's no longer required. We absolutely need this and this solution and this configuration. And I think, you know, in the conversation I had with this key guy in Brave One, these kind of joint partnerships are going to be a key priority for Ukrainian defense tech, but on the proviso that it's not, you know, we're going to give you this, but rather we're going to listen to what you actually need in real time. And I think that's the key mechanic there. I was saying something that's I think is really good is that there's this big initiative to set up in 10 countries in Europe. There will be like zones where Ukrainian companies will be encouraged to come to those countries, invest, build, and scale. That is a win for everyone. Ukrainians can get access to capital in London or Germany or wherever. The factories aren't going to get blown up. Well, you know, Russians will do subterfuge. So they have access to capital. It's British law or EU law, so investors are happy. But then not only that, we get to learn from the Ukrainians in our own country, and that is upskilling us, helping our country build its economy whilst building our defense industrial base, but also then enabling Ukraine to get access to new tech. And also, obviously, Ukraine is the best in the world at drone combat. I don't think anyone sensible can dispute that. But that doesn't mean the rest of the world has nothing to offer. And I think so. I think I sent you the interview with Lesia Vasilenko and Alexander Komiak with Gideon Rackman. That's an excellent one.
Yeah, so those two. So Lesia is an MP in the Rada. Her husband's called Sasha, Alexander. And they've been lobbying really hard. It's just like, we're really good at what we do, but we really want to be able to have like a defense tech hub in the UK because we know what we're good at, but we also know there is stuff that your country is really good at and we don't have the kit. Like if you just look at the National Composite Centre in the UK or the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre, That's like billions of dollars of kit. And literally, I've been to those places loads of time. Most of the equipment is doing nothing most of the time. The technicians and the engineers, generally the technicians are twiddling their thumbs, waiting for something to do. Just like, my God, we've got the best bloody technology in the world. This is the Airbus wing of the future, if it's the National Composite Centre. If it's the AMRC, this is basically Boeing's research centre in the UK. It's full of all of their best kit, not being used. Technicians twiddling their thumbs, academics looking for something interesting to do. It's like, let's give that to Ukraine somehow. Let's find a way to give that to Ukraine.
This problem.
I'd have been proud if it was Britain that did it first. Yep. I mean, Octopus, our interceptor drone, looks very, very similar to a Sting. Interesting. But yeah, it seems people actually listen. And yeah, if we industrialize our user industrial base, Ukraine's going to have just that. We are so much more technologically advanced in Russia. They just get oil out the ground. That's all they know how to do. That and crime. No one buys Russian airplanes. There's a bloody good reason for it. They buy European airplanes. So why don't we make European drones to a Ukrainian design, give it back to them, and be like, crack on and tell us if we need to change anything.
There's two things we need to do before we...
At this point, because I have a different meeting to go to. So it's been a
Say,
pleasure.
last words for everybody. So you've got a last word.
I mean, you don't have to, but I just have a meeting in 4 minutes. So
to be honest, Yuri, if you're not here, there's no point me being here.
That's it. That's it. That's it. Jonathan, that's it. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Have a great day.
Thank you, Yuri. It was a pleasure. Big fan. Please continue doing your news shows. Anyone that is knowing how to speak Russian or Ukrainian, please listen to Yuri. It's really
thank you. It's an honor. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Yuri.
It's okay, dude.
I thought there's two things we need to do. One is a final word from everybody to wrap up. The other one, which Jonathan always reminds me of, we need to mention Jiggers Poor and Calf Ukraine, who are our two nominated charities that we sort of raise funds for. And there are links in certainly the description of my video. But we also need to go through a few of the extremely generous thanks, etc. So I don't know if you can see.
You might be there for a long time though, because there's quite a lot of them.
Yeah, I will bounce before you say. Yeah. I appreciate everyone saying thanks, but I'll definitely
say
need
your
to
final
bounce.
word. Then
my wife is already messaging me that she's starving.
You're muted, Joey.
Am I muted?
No, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, my wife is already messaging me that she's starving, so we need to get some food going.
What? Geez, what time is it there? Like midnight?
It's 12. Yeah, midnight. So
okay,
and I've been here without the food getting warmed up and eaten. So I appreciate everyone.
Thank you, brother.
Please support Ukraine, guys. I will say, like, obviously subscribe to all of these people, but the most important thing is what I always say. It's like. It's important to recognize that winning Russia is a marathon, not a sprint. It is only long-term support for Ukraine that is going to prevail. So if you feel that you're burning out, you're taking it way too much in. And right now, thankfully, we're in a positive momentum. So enjoy this while Ukraine is counterattacking. We have good news from the front line and so on. Just be aware that most likely there's going to be some weird shit coming your way at some point. So take care of your personal health, take care of your mental health, support Ukraine, support the charities. If you have some disposable income, support the armed forces of Ukraine. I love you. Slava Ukraini, and I will see you next time.
Take care, Georgis.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you, friend.
Alexander, just while I have you here, I've just sent you a signal. Hello, just let's have a chat. On if you're up for it,
no, I thought you knew each other.
Stuff. Yeah, really, we do. Yeah. I've spoken to Alex.
Well, I've seen before. I've seen the conversations in our Signal group, so now I have the face with the name. So that's nice. Nice hair, by the way. I really like it. It's better than Johnny Pierce's.
I've got amazing hair.
Yes, you do.
Under wraps.
It's angelic.
Don't let anyone see it because
I do want to say this as we're heading out. I want to say thank you to everybody that's a part of supporting Ukraine on all of our channels. As Georgie was saying, I know that Jonathan Fink has hosted this one, so he's pushing up all the thank you chats now, the super chats. I just want to personally say thank you to the moderators on all the channels. You do amazing work. and couldn't do anything without you. Dunk on you for super chat, working but listening. I'll be done soon. Bear with me. Slava Ukraini. Dunk on you, gifting 10 memberships. F Oink, the Hungarian legend, gifting 50 memberships. Linda S. from Australia. Shout out to the mods. Thank you for all the work you do on the Hope Train, which is my community's name there. Australian 20. Paul Deberitz, another one of my moderators, is crew member. Blonde B, Blonde Bombsheller, sending 5 gifted memberships. Nunu 69, 59.99 euro. Full respect to all Ukrainian people. Love them all. Thank you, Nunu. We love you too. At Little Dog 6645. I talked to a Ukrainian friend today. They said as difficult a date as February 24th is, the war started in 2014 for them. Thank you, Little Dog, for sharing that. That is absolutely accurate. Linda S. also gifting 10 memberships. Christine, I messaged her earlier, but she says, all I have to say, make sure everybody on here has beverages, food, and such. Once Greg starts talking, there's no stopping him. Glory to all Ukrainian military. Thanks from the Scottish Tartan Terrier. Thank you, Christine. Barefoot Terry, $10. Slava Ukraina, Linda S. Australia. I believe Zelensky is now more outspoken. Good comment here, because he's no longer putting up with U.S. and Russia BS, because he's getting closer to not needing them. Epic Battles, £5. I'm currently working on new video series about strategic important Crimea and Sevastopol. Thank you for that, Epic Battles. Dunk on you, gifting another 10 memberships. Mitch Ashdown, Canadian. On this anniversary, may we please talk about Ukraine, not the grifter drama queen nation. I think we did a really good job of that, the best we could for you there, Mitch Ashdown. Thank you for that, my friend. Dunk on you, victory is 91 borders, period. Slava Ukraini. Linda S. Ukraine has the most intelligent, inventive, and advanced military in the world. At the moment, Europe should be begging to have them in the EU and NATO. I completely agree. Pyro Kurt, another one of my mods, $10. 12 years in this war, and I still stand with Ukraine, with its soldiers, its families, and every civilian who refuses to surrender their future. Slava Ukraini. Mitch Ashtown back. The countries not doing the fighting are the ones that keep wanting to capitulate. Very good point on that. And Mitch, I know you're from Canada, and one of your Canadian leaders there made quite a statement here a day or so ago, and I agree with it. How one human being can turn the entire world on its side. Christine McDonald again.
Canada is also just today, I think, announced another massive military aid package as well. So.
Military aid package, and I think also Carney's heading to India now to do a deal with Modi, which is good. Okay, guys and dolls, need to get ready for work. From Christine in Scotland. Have fun. Good night. Johnny Nedregard, Norwegian Island Dweller, Norwegian Kroner 22, and I've gone fishing. Why did Medvedev cross the road? Question mark. That is to get to the liquor store. So thank you, everybody. And I know that took some time, but I always want to be grateful and appreciate everybody in this world for standing with us as we stand with Ukraine and try to share. And that's it. We just love you all. Love Ukraine. And until victory.
Well,
thank you, Jonathan, for letting me do that.
We'll do this again. No, you did that more expertly than I ever could.
Alexander, nice to meet you, sir, on here.
Nope.
Yes, nice one. Okay, well, look, yeah, thanks, Greg. And it is worth remembering, of course, that after 4 years of war, there are an awful lot of people who have died, awful lot of civilians and soldiers, families ripped asunder. So it is worth sparing a moment tonight for those people and their loved ones. So it is, yeah.
My studio's downstairs, and when I leave and walk this way, Peach Jacket's hanging right there, and every day, it's just a honor to walk past it every day and remember him, and remember not only Pete but all those that have given their lives fighting. And as President Zelensky so well said, Ukrainians cannot forget those who gave their lives for our country. And it's not just as easy to make a decision. We will never forget. So I think that's the way we all are. We will never forget.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Amen to that.
Hallelujah. Come on, Johnny. Give me a hallelujah.
What was that?
Wait.
I'm messing with Mr. Pierce. I got an amen out of Fink, and I'm trying to get a hallelujah out of Pierce.
I'll give you a secular thumbs up.
We'll take that, my friend. And you know what? Maybe we need to get together here pretty soon, have a rant off.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right,
Yeah, we
mate.
should
Love
definitely
you.
do that.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much,
dude.
Alex.
Thank you,
Brilliant to
Alex.
see you on here.
All
We'll
the best, guys.
do this again.
Indeed.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
for some reason, I can't hear Greg and JP anymore.
Oh, well.
But,
Oh,
Well,
really?
we were saying hello, so thank
Stay
you.
safe, guys. Yeah.
one last. I mean, if there's one last word, Mr. Last comment, all I have to say is Slava Ukraini.
Heroям slava.
Yes.
All right,
Good night, guys.
Yeah. Can I just say a really quick thank you to all my
Please.
all my super chatters, but I'm not going to
Please.
go through them. But I feel really bad about that. But thank you, just to save time. I really, really do appreciate it. And if Alex can hear this or can't, check his signal. Let's get together and have a chat. But Jonathan, think maybe you could repeat that.
Absolutely, I will do. I'll make sure.
And by the way, on the poll that we started earlier, 93% of the folks watching on my channel, victory is 91 borders and Russia castrated. So there you go. All right, guys, y'all have a good morning, and we'll
I'm
have a
going to
good
hit
evening.
the close down button. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Toodle pips.
Toodles. Does Mr.
I
Fink
find
know
the
how to
right
hit the
button.
button?